Have you ever had the strange feeling that something is trying to communicate with you, not in words, not in sentences, but through events, coincidences, signs that appear when least expected? Maybe you think about someone you haven't seen in years, and for no apparent reason, they come your way. Or maybe you're going through a moment of deep doubt, and suddenly a book falls off the shelf, open to the exact page that seems to answer your dilemma. Could this just be the result of chance? Or is there something more subtle, more vast, more intelligent than we can understand? The modern mind, accustomed to scrutinizing everything with the scalpel of reason, is quick to say that all of this is just a coincidence, statistical accidents, illusions of the mind that seeks patterns where they do not exist. But is it really? What if it's just the opposite? What if this search for pattern, this almost instinctive recognition of a hidden thread, is not a mistake, but a profound success, a forgotten instinct that connects us to the most intimate fabric of reality? Alan Watts used to say that the universe is not made of things, but of events. And these events are not like parts of a cold machine, but like notes in a song, intertwined, resonating with each other. In other words, you are not separate from the universe any more than a wave is separate from the ocean. You are the universe looking at itself. And in this look, in this game of mirrors, synchronicities emerge. What we call synchronicity is as if the universe is winking at you, as if to say, I'm here, and so are you, we're in this together. But to understand, you need to be awake, be attentive, because the universe doesn't scream, he whispers, and only those who quiet the internal noise are able to listen. Imagine that life is like a play, but you, instead of watching the show, are inside it. You are the actor, the stage, the script, and even the audience. And the interesting thing is that sometimes in the middle of the play moments appear that seem to be off the script. Moments when something else manifests itself. An unknown character enters the scene, a light falls, exactly at the moment a word is spoken. And you feel a shiver, a wordless certainty that it had to happen that way. The curious thing is that the more you try to rationally explain these moments, the more they slip through your fingers. Synchronicity doesn't like to be dissected because it's not logical. It's symbolic. It's like poetry. You don't understand a poem like you understand an equation. You feel the poem. And in the same way, you feel the synchronicity. It resonates somewhere deep within you, where language has not yet reached. But then the inevitable question arises: if these meaningful coincidences are real, what is organizing them? Who or what is pulling the strings? Is it God, fate, a cosmic plan, or is the very concept of separation between you and the universe an illusion, and are synchronicities merely the natural reflection of an indivisible reality? Alan Watts would say this is a poorly formulated question, because it starts from the premise that there is a separate you trying to understand a universe out there, when in reality everything is intertwined. You are the universe in human form trying to remember yourself, and each synchronicity is a wink of that greater self, a reminder that there is no chance, there is no separation, there is no outside or inside. There is only the flow. And in that flow, everything is where it should be. Every encounter, every disagreement, every traffic delay, every seemingly silly dream, all of this can be a point of intersection between what you think you are and what you really are. And what you really are, well, that's beyond words. This can only be experienced, sensed, witnessed, and sometimes in this silent living you find something you didn't expect. A number that is repeated so many times that it becomes annoying. A symbol that appears in dreams, books, conversations with strangers. A persistent feeling that something is about to happen even if you don't know what. And if you have the courage, Not to run away, not to ignore, not to rationalize too much. Perhaps you will realize that you are being led, not because of something outside of you, but for an intelligence that is you, the part of you that was never deceived, that was never lost, that always knew, the part that watches in silence as the superficial me searches for answers while the ego tries to control the uncontrollable. This part observes and guide and create, and synchronicities are like footprints of this invisible part. Footprints in the sand of consciousness, signs that you are, despite everything, on the right path, even if it doesn't seem like it, even if everything seems to fall apart. Because the universe, like a Zen master, rarely speaks in words. He prefers paradoxes, and perhaps the greatest of all is this: only when you let go of the desperate search for meaning do deeper meanings begin to emerge. Only when you stop trying to understand do you actually begin to understand. You don't have to believe any of this. In fact, the invitation here is the opposite of belief. It's direct experience, a curious observation, the opening to the mystery. Because life is not a problem to be solved, it is a mystery to be lived. And synchronicities, these events as subtle as they are strange, are invitations to mystery, invitations to dance. And deep down, all dance is a play with time. What if that's what synchronicities are? Time's games with conscience. Moments when the future smiles at the present and says, "Calm down, you're doing well." But you see, when we talk about time, we always talk as if it were a straight line, past, present, and future, like stations on a train running on a fixed track. But what if the time is not that? What if time is more like a field, an ocean, where everything is already happening at once? But we, limited by our linear perception, can only navigate one drop at a time. What if synchronicities are cracks in this linear perception? Small cracks through which the eternal infiltrates. The now think about dreams. In dreams there is no chronological logic. You can be in two places at once, talk to someone who has died, watch events that haven't happened yet, and yet within the dream everything seems natural. Why does this seem so strange to us when we wake up? Is what we call waking just another type of dream with stricter rules? Alan Watts liked to play with this idea. It said, what if the life you are living now is the dream of a greater self, a self so vast that it needed to forget itself to experience the game of separation? What if, when you notice a synchronicity, you are for a brief moment peering through the curtains of that oblivion? These meaningful coincidences are like mirrors that not only reflect the face, but the soul. When you see a repeating pattern, numbers, names, images, it stirs something inside you, not because it's magical, but because it's intimate. Play a string that was already vibrating in silence. It's as if the universe is saying, remember something you don't yet know you've forgotten. But be careful, it's easy to fall into the trap of wanting to interpret everything, wanting to turn life into a constant enigma where every detail needs to have a secret meaning. This is not wisdom, it is anxiety in disguise. Because not everything that happens is a message. And paradoxically, it is precisely when you stop looking for messages that the deeper messages begin to reveal themselves. Synchronicity doesn't like to be chased. She likes to be found in silence, in presence, in openness. It's like a wild animal. If you chase it, it runs away. But if you sit quietly with respect, it comes closer. Therefore, the deepest moments of synchrony happen when you are truly present. Washing the dishes, walking down the street, looking at the sky without expecting anything. In this state of surrender, the world changes texture. You begin to see beauty where before there was only habit. A piece of paper flying across the sidewalk becomes a cosmic dance. A look from a stranger turns into a silent reminder. A phrase said at random becomes a personal mantra. Because everything, absolutely everything, starts to have a different shine when you look with the eyes of an awakened heart. And here's another curious thing. The more you align yourself with this state of presence, the more the synchronicities increase. Not because the universe has changed, but because you have changed. Your frequency has changed. It's like tuning a radio. The waves have always been in the air, but it's only when you turn the knob to the right station that you start hearing the music. This song is always playing. She is the sound of the universe breathing, but most of us are so busy with internal noise, judgments, comparisons, desires, fears, that we can't listen. Synchronicity is like a high note in this music that breaks through the noise and calls us back to now, back to being. And the more you listen, the more you realize that you are not here by chance. None of us are. Each life is a unique expression of the whole. And when you start living with this awareness, everything changes. You stop chasing life and start dancing with it. You stop demanding and start being grateful. And in this state of silent gratitude, synchronicities become as natural as breathing. But see, this dance is not about getting somewhere. It's about losing yourself. Losing the idea of control, the idea of ego, the idea that you know what is best. And when you lose yourself, you find yourself. Not as a separate I, but as consciousness itself observing itself. And then every moment, no matter how simple, becomes sacred, not because an angel appeared or because the stars mystically aligned, but because you are their whole present receptive. And in this state, even the flapping of a butterfly's wings can contain a universe of meanings. What if, in the end, everything is like this? A game of mirrors, a sacred theater where infinity disguises itself as everyday life. What if each synchronicity is a spark of this mystery revealing itself, not to be understood but to be contemplated, not to be explained but to be danced? And then comes silence, that kind of silence that is not the absence of sound but fullness of presence. A silence that does not say there is nothing, but everything is here. And in that silence, the mind begins to loosen its need for control. You stop demanding that life be explained and start inhabiting it like someone inhabiting a poem, with reverence, with curiosity, with love. Because what synchronicities really offer are not answers, but portals. Portals to another type of perception. They don't come to prove something, but to suggest. Not to convince, but to invite. An invitation to live with the eyes of the soul. And when you accept this invitation, something changes irreversibly. It is as if a second layer of reality reveals itself, a layer made not of matter, but of living meaning. You start to realize that things don't happen to you nor against you. They just happen through of you. And what changes is your way of being with them. A setback becomes synchronicity when looked at with the heart. A loss becomes a teaching when looked at with dedication. An uncomfortable silence turns into meditation when embraced without resistance. Life then stops being a straight line, with a beginning, middle, and end, and becomes a pulsating field of possibilities where everything is interconnected in a living network of events. And you, instead of being a spectator, become a co-author. Not because he decides everything rationally, but because he is in tune with something bigger, something that cannot be named, but that can be felt in every cell of the body. Alan Watts spoke of this experience as a kind of divine game, the game of life where the universe pretends not to know that it is the universe so that it can find itself, be surprised, recognize itself in each being. And in this game, the synchronicities are the player's nods to himself, a reminder that behind the appearance of chaos and randomness, there is a dance in perfect harmony. But be careful, this perception is not an end. It is just the beginning. When you begin to notice synchronicities, you are no longer in control of the old game, the game of ego, of separation, of fear. Now you are in another game, more subtle, more vast, lighter, a game where the rules are paradoxical. To win, you have to let go. To understand, you have to forget. To get there, you have to stop walking. And paradoxically, the more you let go, the more everything falls into place. The right people appear, paths open, answers emerge. Not because you have finally mastered life, but because you have stopped resisting it. And in that non-resistance you flow. And in the flow you listen, and when you listen you understand, not with the mind, but with something deeper, quieter, wiser. This wisdom is not in books, nor in gurus, nor in theories. She is here now in every breath, in every encounter, in every silence, and it manifests itself most clearly when you live with the confidence that you are not alone. Because in a way, you never were. You are part of a cosmic tapestry woven with threads of time, emotion, intention, and mystery. And each synchronicity is a luminous point in this fabric where the threads meet, where the invisible touches the visible. And you realize that everything, absolutely everything, has a place. Even doubt, even the error, even silence. True freedom comes when you stop trying to understand life as a problem and start living it as a dance. And dancing is being in relationship with the rhythm, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, sometimes moving, sometimes still, but always in tune with something that comes from inside and outside at the same time. And perhaps this is the greatest gift of synchronicities. They teach us how to dance. We are taught that we are not here to dominate the world, but to participate in it. That we are not here to win life, but to live it to the fullest. That we are not separated, lost, loose in a cold universe. We are intertwined. We are at home. And there is a moment almost imperceptible when you stop looking for signs and start living them. Because they are no longer extraordinary events that interrupt the normal course of existence, but the very way life speaks to you, how it reveals itself. Synchronicity then stops being an exception and becomes the natural language of the universe. And what was once perceived as a miracle becomes everyday, not because it has lost its magic, but because you finally remember that life was always magical. Forgetting was what was artificial. When you are truly awake, each event carries with it a symbolic charge, a mirror in which you can see yourself from angles you never suspected. A bus, you miss an unexpected phone call, a loose phrase spoken by a stranger. All of this becomes raw material for self-knowledge. And not because the world is conspiring to teach you something, but because you have started to live as someone who listens. Attention is the true channel of synchronicity. It is not the universe that changes, it's you who tunes in. It is you who begins to dance to the rhythm of the unspeakable. Alan Watts used to say that life is like music. Your purpose is not to reach the end of the song, but to enjoy every note. And if you think about it, no note is by chance. Every sound, every pause, every breath between one chord and another has an exact place. So too are events that seem random. They compose a melody that can only be heard when you stop chasing the ending and start dancing with the present. And perhaps that is what synchronicities most want to teach us, that time is not an arrow, but a circle. That there is no future to conquer, but a present to inhabit. And in this dwelling of now, you begin to perceive something even more subtle. Something that escapes the rushing eyes and the calculating mind. You realize that there is an intelligence in life that does not fit the mold of common logic. An intelligence that is not expressed in equations or systems, but in living poetry. And each synchronicity is like a verse of this poem thrown into the wind to be captured only by those who know how to read with their soul. This intelligence is not outside. She is you in your most intimate, most authentic, most silent form. It is your deepest self, the one that has never been conditioned, that has never been hurt, that has never been separated from wholeness. And this self does not speak in words. He speaks through life. He speaks through the moment when you give up fighting what is. It whispers when you decide to trust the flow even without understanding the direction. It manifests itself when you let go of the need to control, to define, to understand everything, and simply allow yourself to be. And in this being, everything takes on a new color. The butterfly that lands on your shoulder, the number that insists on appearing the conversation that arrives as an unsought answer. All of this becomes presence, and presence is in itself sacred. But don't be fooled. This is not a formula to transform your life into a fairy tale. Synchronicities are not here to avoid pain, but to transform your relationship with it. They do not appear to create easy shortcuts, but to remind you that each step, even the most difficult ones, is part of a larger choreography, often invisible to the eye, but deeply recognizable to the heart. And when you really understand this, something inside you relaxes. You no longer need to have all the answers. You no longer need to force your way through. You just walk and trust. Because now you know that even without maps, there is an inner compass. And it points to something real, something living, something eternal. Synchronicity is the trail that the invisible leaves as it passes. It is evidence that there is in the fabric of existence a subtle interweaving that connects everything you. The other times, space dreams, symbols, the past, the future, the present. And in this interweaving, what seemed disconnected begins to make sense. What seemed banal reveals depth. What seemed like suffering becomes a portal. Because now you see with different eyes. The eyes of someone who does not want to dominate the world, but of someone who remembers that they are already part of it inseparably. And when that memory sets in, not as a belief, but as an experience, life begins to unfold differently, no longer as a challenge to be overcome, but as a story being told through you. And each synchronicity is an exclamation point, a whisper from the author saying, "Are you listening? Are you seeing? There's more here than meets the eye." And if you respond with a slight inner smile, with a sigh of recognition, with a look that says yes, then the dialogue begins. And the dialogue never ends, because now you heard it, and those who listened can no longer pretend they didn't hear. And what happens when this dialogue deepens is something that escapes language, but that transforms everything. You begin to realize that what you once called me, that inner voice that criticizes, compares, demands, was just a superficial layer of your identity. Beneath it there is something much more vast, a conscious silence, a presence that observes, that allows, that loves without condition. And it is from this presence that synchronicities emerge, not as external phenomena, but as reflections of your own inner state. It's as if the universe is always in resonance with you, and as you become more integral, more true to yourself, the clearer the reflection becomes. The coincidences stop being random and begin to have a smooth logic, as if the world is gently conspiring in your favor. Not to satisfy your desires, but to guide you back to your essence. And on this path, the right encounters become inevitable. The right words arrive at the exact moment. Opportunities appear like ripe fruits that simply fall into your lap. And you no longer marvel in a naive way. You just smile because you understand. You recognize. And this recognition does not come from the mind that analyzes. It comes from a part of you that has always known. A wisdom that does not depend on proof, explanations, validations. It is the same wisdom that exists in the trees that grow towards, the sun in the birds that migrate, without maps, in the tides that obey the moon without question. It is the intelligence of the cosmos itself, operating in you as you. But that doesn't mean your life will become challenge-free. On the contrary, the challenges continue, perhaps even intensifying, because now you are more alive, more sensitive, more connected. But the big difference is that now you see them from another place. You see them as necessary parts of a larger dance. You accept them as masters in disguise. And every obstacle, every pain, every loss becomes fertile soil for the flowering of a deeper consciousness. And that's where synchronicities begin to take on an even more beautiful role. They don't just point directions or confirm intuitions. They heal. They show that you were never alone, that even in the darkest moments there was a silent intelligence orchestrating every detail. And when you look back with your eyes awake, you realize that even the detours were part of the path, that even the falls were taking you deeper, closer to yourself. This kind of perception completely changes the way you live. You stop seeing life as a sequence of successes and mistakes, victories and failures, and you begin to see it as a flow that is not going anywhere, because the point is not to arrive, the point is to be. Being whole in every moment, in every breath, in every silence. And when you are whole, life responds, the universe responds, and the answers come not as solutions but as bars of a song that can only be heard in the now. Alan Watts said that life is like swimming in a river. If you try to swim against the current, you get tired, you suffer, you get lost. But if you trust and let yourself be carried by the current, it takes you, not necessarily where you imagine, but where you need to be. And in that letting go, you don't lose control. You find freedom, because true freedom is not in controlling everything. It is in trusting in what is greater. And synchronicities are exactly that, little confirmations that you are in the river, that you let go of the branches, let go of the banks, trusted the flow. And then even the stones that appear along the way stop being obstacles and become part of the dance. You stop asking life to fit your desires and start wanting to live life as it is. And in this change of posture, everything changes. Fear gives way to surrender. Anxiety gives way to confidence. Separation gives way to union. It is at this point that the perception of synchronicity transforms into something even deeper: communion. You don't just notice coincidences, you feel that and the coincidence. You don't just watch the flow, you are the flow. And in this state, life stops being an enigma to be deciphered and becomes a constant miracle to be contemplated. Every gesture, every look, every heartbeat starts to carry the signature of the whole, and you live no longer as one who seeks, but as one who remembers. Remember that everything is one. Remember that you are already whole. Remember that you were always at home. And so in this state of remembering, you no longer live waiting for synchronicities. You live as one. Your very existence becomes a significant event, a bridge between worlds, a living manifestation of cosmic consciousness in action. You no longer need the universe to send you signs, because you realize that you are the sign. Your smile, your silence, your simple presence become messages for others. And without you realizing it, you become the perfect coincidence someone needed at that moment. This is where the cycle closes and at the same time opens infinitely. Because there is no final destination, a finish line where everything is explained and everything is resolved. There is only eternal unfolding, the constant becoming of a reality that dances with itself, and you are in it. And you are her, not as something separate, but as part of the song, like a chord that only makes sense within the larger melody, like a drop that doesn't need to taste anything to know that it belongs to the ocean. And this perception even changes what you understand by purpose. Purpose stops being something to be achieved up front and becomes a quality of presence. Purpose is to be here now, truly. It's listening to others with an open heart. It's walking without rushing. It's allowing yourself to be vulnerable without losing your wholeness. It's touching the world with kindness, knowing that each gesture, no matter how small it may seem, carries waves that go far beyond the visible. Synchronicities in the end are not about divination, omens, or magic in the mystical and spectacular sense. They are about intimacy. Intimacy with life, with mystery, with the vastness that lives inside and outside of us. And this intimacy doesn't require formulas. It doesn't ask you to believe in anything specific. She just asks that you be. May you feel. May you recognize. And when that happens, even silence gains a voice. Even emptiness becomes full of meaning. Even chaos reveals a deeper order. because now you are no longer trying to control life. You are in communion with it. And that is true awakening. Not a grand moment of lights and flashes, but a simple return to the way things have always been. A quiet recognition that everything has always been in the right place, including you. So the next time life seems full of strange coincidences, stop for a moment. Breathe, listen, feel, and maybe you'll realize that it's not life that's changed. It's you who started to see with the eyes of the whole. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, because now you know. And knowing at this level is not knowing with the mind. It is being with the heart. If this video touched something in you, if it sparked reflections or brought some clarity, don't forget to leave a like. This helps the channel reach more people who are also searching for meaning and awakening. Share with someone you feel needs to hear this message. And of course, subscribe for more videos that dive deep into the soul of existence. Until the next philosophical journey. And remember, just maybe you were guided here by more than just a click.